I thought my husband's work wife was his mistress. Turns out she was his secret sister. I, 32F, have been married to my husband Jake, 34M, for 6 years, together for almost 10. He's always been a reliable, predictable guy, the type who sets reminders for everything, from dentist appointments to when the dog needs flea meds. I used to joke that if he ever cheated, he'd probably make a Google Calendar event for it. Jake works in finance, and a couple of years ago, he started mentioning a new colleague, Emily, 29F. He didn't talk about her excessively, just enough that I knew she was part of his work life. She was his work wife, which I found amusing at first. He'd tell me about their inside jokes, how she always had a stash of snacks at her desk, or how she gave him grief for using too many exclamation points in emails. I wasn't the jealous type, and frankly, I trusted him. But then small things started bothering me. One night, we were at a dinner party with some of his coworkers, and when someone casually mentioned Emily, another colleague, Mark, gave Jake a weird look and quickly changed the subject. It was subtle, but my gut registered it. Later, I asked Jake about it, and he laughed, saying Mark was just being dramatic because Emily used to date someone in the office. Nothing to do with him. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. A month later, I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw Emily's name pop up under the People You May Know section. Out of curiosity, I clicked on her profile. It was private, but her profile picture showed her at a wedding where I immediately recognized the background because I had been there too. It was Jake's cousin's wedding. My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen trying to process it. Emily didn't work with Jake when that wedding happened. As far as I knew, they met at his job 2 years ago. But this wedding was 4 years ago. Why would she be there? I needed answers. I didn't bring it up right away. Instead, I did what any sane, not at all spiraling wife would do. I went into full detective mode. First, I checked the guest list from the wedding. Jake's cousin, Laura, had sent out a digital invitation, and because I never delete emails, a habit Jake teases me for, I found it easily. Emily's name wasn't on there. Okay, maybe she was someone's plus one. I started combing through my own photos from that night. I barely remembered half the people there, but now I was looking for one face. And then, in the background of a picture of me and Jake, there she was, Emily, standing next to Jake's brother. A weird feeling settled in my stomach. His brother, Matt, had been single for as long as I'd known him. If he'd been dating someone serious enough to bring to a family wedding, I would have known. So why was Emily there? I needed to be smart about this. If I just confronted Jake, he'd have time to come up with a reasonable excuse. Instead, I casually asked about the wedding while we were watching TV one night. Do you remember your cousin's wedding? That was such a fun night. Jake barely looked up from his phone. Yeah, it was nice. Who did Matt bring as his date? I asked, trying to sound offhanded. That got his attention. He frowned. Matt didn't bring anyone. My heart pounded, but I kept my voice light. Really? I could have sworn I saw him with someone. Jake shook his head. Nah, he came alone. Why? I shrugged. Just curious. Inside, my mind was racing. Why would Emily be there if she wasn't with Matt? And why had Jake lied? I had to keep digging. The next day, I called Laura. We were friendly, though not super close, so I made up a harmless excuse for calling, something about needing a catering recommendation. Then, as casually as I could, I steered the conversation toward the wedding. By the way, I was looking through old photos the other day and saw this girl in the background. I don't think I ever met her. She had dark blonde hair, kind of short. Do you remember who she was? Laura was quiet for a second. Dark blonde. Oh, you mean Emily? I gripped my phone. Yeah, I think so. How did she know you guys? Another pause. She didn't. She was Jake's guest. I swear I stopped breathing for a full 5 seconds. Jake's guest? I repeated, trying to sound normal. Yeah, I remember because it was a little last minute. He told me they were just friends, but honestly, the way they acted, I kind of assumed they were dating. I barely heard the rest of what she said. I mumbled something about needing to go and hung up. I sat there in complete silence. Jake had brought Emily to a family wedding before he ever officially met her at work, and he never told me. For a solid 10 minutes, I just sat there, staring at my phone. My mind was running a mile a minute, trying to connect dots that refused to make sense. Jake had taken Emily to a wedding 4 years ago, but they met at work 2 years ago. That meant either Laura was confused, or, more likely, Jake had been lying to me. I considered my options. I could confront him outright, demand answers. But something told me if I played it cool, I'd get more. So I waited. That night, as we got ready for bed, I casually mentioned that I'd talked to Laura. She says hi, by the way, I said, watching him in the mirror as I took off my makeup. Jake, already in bed, mumbled, "Oh, yeah? That's nice." I turned around. We were reminiscing about her wedding. Crazy how time flies. She mentioned you brought someone as your date. That got him. He froze for just a second, just long enough. What? No, I didn't. That's weird, I said, tilting my head. She specifically remembered you bringing Emily. Jake blinked, his whole body tensed. And then, instead of denying it again, he did something unexpected. He laughed. Not a real laugh. A dry, humorless one. Yeah, he finally said, rubbing his face. Okay, I did. I waited, my heart pounding. It's not what you think, he said, sitting up. I didn't tell you because I knew how it would look. But Emily and I weren't dating. We weren't even close back then. I crossed my arms. So why was she your date? He hesitated. She wasn't my date. She was doing me a favor. A favor? Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, it was stupid, okay? Before the wedding, I was getting a lot of pressure from my family about still being single. Matt had a joke going that I was the lonely finance guy who'd never settled down. I hated it, so I asked Emily to come with me, just as a fake date. I stared at him. You expect me to believe that? I swear, he said quickly. We barely even talked before that. She was dating some guy at the time, but I knew her through a mutual friend. I asked if she'd be willing to play along just to get my family off my back. I wanted to believe him. I almost did, but something still felt off. If that's true, I said slowly, why didn't you just tell me when you first mentioned her? Why lie about when you met? Jake exhaled sharply. Because I knew you'd react like this. I knew it would sound bad. I was about to argue when a realization hit me. The wedding was 4 years ago. Emily started working with Jake 2 years ago. What are the chances, I said, almost to myself, that 2 years after your fake date, she just happened to end up working at your company? Jake's expression shifted, just slightly, but I caught it. She applied for the job on her own, he said quickly. Too quickly. I narrowed my eyes. Did you get her the job? Silence. And that's when I knew. Jake, I said, my voice eerily calm. Tell me the truth. Did you know her before the wedding? He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw real panic in his eyes. Jake, I repeated, how did you meet Emily? He opened his mouth, closed it, and then, very quietly, he said, She's my sister. I felt the blood drain from my face. What? I whispered. Jake looked like he wanted to be anywhere but here. She's my half-sister. The room spun. I. What? My brain couldn't catch up. He rubbed his temples. It's complicated, okay? I didn't find out until a few years ago. My dad, he had an affair years ago. Emily's the result of that. We didn't know about each other growing up. When I found out, I don't know, shocked. But I reached out to her. We talked. And eventually, I invited her to the wedding. My mouth opened and closed. So, you took your secret half-sister as your date to a wedding, never told me, then helped her get a job at your company, and just thought I'd never find out. He flinched. I wasn't trying to hide her. I just didn't know how to tell you. And then time passed, and it got harder. And then she started working with me, and I figured, what's the point in bringing it up? I sat down on the edge of the bed, my head spinning. So all this time, I said slowly, I thought you were cheating. But really, you were just keeping a secret family member from me? Jake winced. Yeah, pretty much. I let out a disbelieving laugh. Do you have any other long-lost siblings I should know about? Not that I'm aware of, he muttered. And that's how I found out my husband had a secret half-sister, who I thought was his mistress.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit notifications, and if you like this video, press like button. See you in next Deep Reddit videos.